I would like to now move to introduce our first speaker of the day, who is going to be Brahmananda David Nowe from India. Swami Brahmananda Saraswati was born David Donald Nowe in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. At the age of 25, David Nowe met Swami Muktananda and received Shaktipat initiation. And 5 years later, he was given the monastic name Brahmananda. In 1981, Muktananda instructed Brahmananda to found the Siddha Meditation Center in Los Angeles and appointed him as the national coordinator of all Siddha Yoga centers and ashrams in the United States. Brahmananda has been very active in interfaith ministries and has traveled to more than 75 countries. Swami Brahmananda now lives in India, where he offers satsangs, conducts Shaktipat intensives, and is actively involved in bringing meditation into the school system of India. So with that, I turn it over to Swami Brahmananda.
I think what I will do at this point is just cut to the point in my talk where I meet my guru and the awakening takes place. I was born Catholic, traditional family, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Catholic school, conservative upbringing, pre-law student. And when I graduated high school, I had the choice of going into the Marines and fighting in Vietnam or going to the university. And I got a scholarship to Columbia University and chose to go there. And when I arrived at Columbia, it was back in 1968, in the height of the anti-war movement and the protests and everything on campus. And I was really confronted with a complete different set of values. As I arrived at the university campus, I was really confronted with my spirituality. Having been raised Catholic, people began to question me and my views on the war in Vietnam and various things. So I was really looking for the truth when I had an experience on the football team that really changed my perspective. I was on scholarship at Columbia playing football. We were playing the University of Pennsylvania, and during the game, I got hit in the ribs, cracked the sternum, and broke a few ribs. So they took me to the hospital, St. Luke's Hospital, which was the nearest hospital, and they took me to the emergency room where I was waiting to be tended to. And I spent 12 hours in the waiting room. We shared a waiting room with Morningside Heights, where I went to school with Harlem. And there were a lot of poor people there waiting to be treated, many seriously injured or seriously ill. So much so that I waited 12 hours to be taken care of because broken ribs was a very low priority. And while I was there, I saw several people die in the waiting room, waiting to be attended to. After waiting for 12 hours and still not being taken care of, something snapped inside of me. I'd been told about the other part of the world. I'd never really been exposed to true poverty before, and so I was really upset by what I saw. And I began wandering the streets of New York. I spent the next week or so wandering all over Harlem, Spanish Harlem, the Bowery. And my initial awakening was very much like the Buddha, that I'd never really seen that side of life before. Poverty, old age, sickness, drug addiction, people living a life of misery. And I could see over the course of that week that I had a paradigm shift in the way that I saw the world, that I was suddenly seeing it through new eyes. It was like my world crumbled. All that I believed in, I began to question. In fact, I decided to drop out of school and begin to travel the world. It just happened to be in the first lottery for the Vietnam War, so I decided to get into school, but abroad. and I went to school in France, went to school in Lebanon, went to school in Japan, and began exploring other cultures, seeking the truth. Studied with some Sufi Muslims and the Sufi teacher in the Middle East in Lebanon. Spent a little time in a Zen dojo, learning how to meditate. Came back to the States, learned transcendental meditation. Took a course with the Rosicrucians, on mystical Christianity. And as I was taking the course, it was a correspondence course. The last chapter, the last of the correspondence lesson sent to me was, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I felt the God chills. I felt that I was truly ready to meet a teacher, a guru. And at that time I heard that Swami Muktananda was going to be in the United States. And a group of my friends were taking a trip to see him. They had a caravan from New York City all the way to San Francisco to the Oakland ashram to meet him. On the way, I heard that Muktananda had suffered some illness, was having seizures, and was in the hospital in San Francisco. So I was heartbroken that I wasn't going to have a chance to meet him right away. But we arrived, and he sent word that he wanted to meet those of us who just arrived. And I intuitively knew that this was my guru, that this was someone that was going to be really important to me in my life. And I desperately wanted to make a good impression on him. So I meditated deeply as I could that morning so that I could clear my mind, purify my mind. I had a cup of coffee to make my mind really alert in case he asked me a test question. I even put on my best spiritual clothes. This was the 60s, so I had a denim jacket with the signs of the zodiac and a pair of jeans with the Om patch on the rear end. So I was really prepared to meet this great guru. I was brought before him, and as I knelt in front of him, he looked at me and he said, "What's your name?" My mind suddenly went blank. I couldn't remember my name. And he kind of chuckled and swatted me with his peacock feathers. And I felt this rush of energy and complete inner stillness. He then said to me, "Where are you from?" Once again, my mind was so still, I couldn't remember where I was from. But I remembered my name. I said, "Baba, I'm David Nowe." He said, "Very good." Swatted me with peacock feathers. He told me to go sit over in the corner. He was greeting other people. And as I was sitting over there in the corner, suddenly Baba looked at me, and our eyes met, and I felt a flash of light, saw a flash of light come out of his eyes and enter my heart. And there was an explosion, instant explosion. My heart opened. I felt a love that I'd never felt before. I felt peace that transcended words. The room was filled with light, and inside all I could think of was, I've come home. This is what I've been looking for all these years of travel. I sat there for the next 3 hours in a deep state I later came to understand that they called samadhi. It happened spontaneously and naturally through the grace of a living saint. Well, this is what I was looking for. So I decided to not even go back to New York City to unpack my apartment, let it go. I just stayed in the ashram, moved in immediately, and began to do sadhana. Now, at the time I met Muktananda, I had arthritis, crippling arthritis. I used to get cortisone's injection on a regular basis in my feet and in my knees, take butazolidine, I was physically very, very sick. So what happened is I began my process of meditation in the ashram was that every time I would sit spontaneously and naturally, without me understanding what it was or doing anything, I would begin to do pranayama, kind of bellows breathing called astrika. Would spontaneously happen, and this would go on for half an hour, 45 minutes at a time. Then my body would spontaneously begin to do Hatha yoga postures that I had never heard of or never done before. Sometimes my neck would shake, roll, and to make a long story short, I was having something called kriyas. Kriyas are movements of the awakened Shakti, the awakened Kundalini. I didn't realize it at the time. I later found out that what had happened was I had received Shaktipat, which is the direct transmission of fully awakened energy from a guru into a student, into a disciple, which awakened the Kundalini, the dormant force, the life force within us all that's said to be dormant because it only functions at a fraction of its spiritual potential. So during this awakening, the Kundalini had begun to move within me and was causing these spontaneous physical movements for the purpose of removing the blocks. And to make a long story short, over a period of 9 months, I had very wild movements. And the result was that I had a spontaneous remission of rheumatoid arthritis. Went back to see my medical doctor, and he checked me and he said, we have no explanation for this. Spontaneous remissions of rheumatoid arthritis don't just happen, but it did in my case. So from then on, I've never had any experience of the arthritis returning. These kriyas, these purifications in the tradition of yoga can take place on a mental level, on a physical level, on a spiritual level. And the purpose is to remove whatever blocks we have, not just in our physical body, but in our subtle body, in our chakras, in our sacred centers. So I lived with Muktananda for the next 8 years and went through a series of awakening. That experience of samadhi was temporary. I had maybe a 3-hour experience of initial awakening samadhi, but over a period of time, that experience began to dissolve a little bit, and I realized I needed to do something called sadhana, spiritual practice, in order to become a worthy vessel to hold this awakened energy. The analogy they often use in India is that a seeker needs to become like a golden chalice. The golden chalice can hold the milk of a tiger. It's not porous, it doesn't leak. So I began to do a sadhana, a deep sadhana of meditation, chanting, hatha yoga, selfless service. And one of the obstacles I needed to overcome was an old belief. Having been raised Catholic, I was told that there was only one Savior, only one being who had attained that. And here I was worshiping, as it were, a Hindu man, and I was having some challenges with it. I couldn't deny my experiences. They were so powerful. They were so miraculous. But inside there was this doubt. Am I worshiping a man? And what is this about? One day we were chanting Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. And my voice wasn't particularly good in those days. I was the kid in the choir in school when we had choir that they said, don't sing, just mouth the words and pretend like you're singing, because I was a little tone deaf. But my Baba said, just chant the mantra with great love, with great devotion. That's what's important. So I was chanting. Suddenly I found my consciousness descend from my head into my heart. It's hard to describe, but I felt like I was in the cave of my heart. I saw a light in the distance coming towards me. As this light came towards me, it filled my heart and opened my heart with great love and great joy. As the light came closer, I could see that the light was coming out of Sacred Heart of Jesus. This was my Ishtadevata, my chosen deity, as as a young Catholic boy. Here was Jesus appearing to me as light. And in this vision, my consciousness entered into the heart of Jesus. And seated in the heart of Jesus, I could see my teacher, Swami Muktananda, seated. And the light was actually coming from his heart out to me. And again, I was filled with the love, with the joy. My consciousness continued inside of my Baba's heart. And inside, I could see a vision of myself, seated in meditation with my eyes closed and my heart open. And the light was actually coming from my own heart. And I was surprised. And I heard my Baba's voice saying, "So what did you expect to find here? The light, the love is coming from within your own heart. You, in fact, are the source of love and joy. You are the Guru. You are the Christ. You are the Self." And with those words, I was suddenly back in my body. And I could hear my physical body chanting in tune, on key. Something inside had opened, and I could hear music for the first time. I considered it a great miracle. It resolved the issue for me of Christianity, Catholicism, Hinduism. The truth is the truth, called by many names, whether you call it the Christ, or the Guru, or the Atman, or Shiva, or Allah. The truth dwells within each of us as our own being. So I lived in the ashram with Muktananda. I studied Vedanta, Kashmir Shaivism, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the Narada Bhakti Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, and continued to do my sadhana. There was a period of time when I needed to work a little bit. My family was opening up a business in Columbus, Ohio. So I would frequently need to go to Columbus, Ohio to work and then return back to the ashram and be with my Baba. And this one weekend before I left, Baba had given a talk about the value of the mantra. The mantra Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om's the name of the supreme designate, the supreme being. The Ma means I bow to, I honor, I worship. And Shiva is the name that we use in our tradition for the divine consciousness that dwells within each of us as our own being. And in this talk, Muktananda was saying that at the moment of death, our final thought determines our next incarnation. And that if we could somehow, at the moment of death, remember to repeat the mantra, we would attain full enlightenment, full liberation. So these words were contemplating over the weekend. I was doing Om Namah Shivaya in my japa mala. And we were getting ready to fly back from Columbus, Ohio, back to upstate New York, where Muktananda was staying in the Catskills. And my friend, Philip Rippetts, your old friend, had just got his pilot's license and had rented a Piper Cub. He said, "I'll fly us back. Let's go back together. We'll go back to South Fallsburg in this single engine plane." So that Monday morning, we're heading back. And we get to the airport. And it's about 9 o'clock in the morning. And for some reason, there was just delay after delay after delay. We couldn't get the gas, flat tire on the plane, and just a variety of things. And we were delayed. We didn't take off till like 11 o'clock. We had at least 2 hours of delays. And we're in the air about an hour, flying from Columbus to New York. And Phil says, "You know, I had a vision this morning. Baba appeared to me in my meditation, and he said, 'I'm really waiting to see you, looking forward to seeing you. Just make sure that you leave by 10 o'clock. I looked at Phil, I said, "Phil, We left at 11 o'clock. Why didn't you tell me this before we took off? Other than leave by 10 and we left at 11. What's up? What's with that? You know? So we drove a couple more hours in the single engine plane, and a huge storm kicked up in the Pocono Mountains on most of the way to the Catskills, where we had a big storm kicked up, and it was rocking the plane, and we couldn't see, and we called ahead to the control tower, and they said, we're storming here. What should we do? They said, look, fly by instrument. So I said, I'm a new pilot. I haven't been qualified to fly by instruments yet, but what should I do? He said, well, you should look around for a place to land. So we started looking around, and every place that we saw that we could land was suddenly filled in by clouds. Huge storm buffeting the plane back and forth. We started to get a little frightened. So we remembered what Baba had said. Repeat the mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. So the storm got worse and worse, and couldn't find a place to land, and there wasn't an airport nearby. So we called the control tower and said, well, we're gonna look around for a field to land the plane. Om Namah Shivaya. And we signed off. At this point, we were a little concerned. There were three of us in the plane, and we were feverishly repeating the mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. We saw a little field up ahead. We said, oh, that looks pretty good. So we buzzed back, and by the time the field was covered in with fog. Plane, the rain's pouring down. We made a decision. It was right near sunset. The next field we saw, we were going to have to lay the plane down and land it no matter what, and just take the consequences. So jettisoning the fuel, getting rid of the fuel in case there's a fire or something, and we're looking for a field to land. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. I'm praying, Lord, if this is our end, make it quick. I want to remember the mantra. No pain, no burning, just two, like that. Om Namah Shivaya. So we saw a field up ahead. We decided to land. As we were landing, getting close, we had to clip through the trees, the bank, to get to make the landing. We saw it was a cornfield. We kept thinking we were landing. We kept going lower and lower and lower. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. We saw a big barn right in front of us. When suddenly the front wheel snapped off in a ditch, flipped the plane over, and we were safe. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Now, what we didn't know was at the time this was going on, my Baba was giving a talk in front of 1,000 people in South Florida, and he was narrating this adventure live as we were going through it. He had this ability to see at long distances, and he was describing three of his disciples were on the way to see him and were repeating the mantra Om Namah Shivaya and would be saved as a result of that. We got out of the plane unscathed, got someone to ride us to the ashram, and Baba's longtime disciple, was at the door, there to greet us, when we arrived. And she brought us immediately to Baba's feet. I had never been that close to my Baba, able to put my head literally on his feet, that I rested on his feet. He putted me on the back with his hand like this. And it was as if I had stuck my hand in an electric socket. The energy was shaking. It was so powerful. And I was filled with Shakti, filled with energy. I had no idea how long my head was on his feet. But when I turned to get up and turned around, I needed help walking because all I could see was lights. There was blue light everywhere. There were 1,000 people in the room. I couldn't see physical form. I just saw blue lights everywhere. I stared real hard and focused my mind. I could see the form. I couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl, an old man or a young child. I could just see barely a form. everything, this scintillating, shimmering consciousness. And this state stayed with me for a good 3 days or so. People would have to feed me. I could barely walk. People had to walk because all I could see was consciousness. Now, gradually, this experience of universal consciousness began to dissolve, and then it began to return to my natural state, but with a new perspective. That the words of the scriptures of Shiva, the Shiva Sutras, Chaitanyam Atman, now made complete sense to me. That the essential nature of the universe is consciousness, and the essential nature of each of us is consciousness. Chaitanyam Atma, that I am that. Tattvamasi. So I was living in this state of ecstasy and joy, living in peace, but really not able to function so well in the world. It's a little bit of a bliss bunny or space cadet. I just lived in bliss and wanted to meditate all the time. That's all I wanted to do, was to meditate, to chant and do service. So at that moment, my Baba told me that I should go to work in the kitchen in the ashram. And this is not something I really wanted to do. The people that worked in the kitchen didn't get to meditate. They didn't get to go to talks. They get up at 3:30 in the morning. They chopped vegetables for 3 hours and prepared breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And Baba gave me those exact instructions. He said, "No more meditation for you for a while. No chanting, no courses. I want you to learn to work in the kitchen." There's a saying in the Shiva Sutra, the Lokananda Samadhi Sukam, that the true samadhi is the bliss that can be experienced in the world. So there's sort of two levels of self-realization. One we call Atma Vyapti, which is the realization of the self. I am consciousness in meditation. But that's only part of it. The next stage is we have to experience that same awareness of consciousness in the world, in our daily lives. We need to be able to integrate this into the living experience. And this was the next stage in my growth with my Baba, was to learn to experience that while chopping vegetables. To be honest with you, I was a little resistant to that. I would sometimes sneak away and meditate for a little bit, try to go to a chant. And wasn't a particularly good chanter, a chopper. That was my job in the kitchen, was chopping vegetables. And I would frequently lose consciousness and chop part of my finger off. I wasn't really that good at it. I didn't fully embrace my guru's command to learn how to chop vegetables. So one day, while I was chopping kind of lackadaisically, my Baba came in to the kitchen. We were chopping cucumbers. Took the knife out of my hand. It's a little piece of cucumber, maybe this big, that was unchopped. Baba took the knife and he went, I've never seen anybody chop that fast. He was a 74-year-old man, but chopped it in an instant. And every slice was perfectly chopped, same size, paper thin, beautifully chopped. He looked at me and he said, "There's 30 pieces there. I want you to count them." I counted the pieces, and there were only 27. So I didn't know what to do. Should I lie? There was a lot of people around. Should I say that there's 30, or should I be honest with Baba? So I said, "Baba, there's only 27 pieces here." I was a little shy, a little sheepish about it. Turned the knife over, stuck to the other side of me, 3 pieces, exactly 30 pieces. Cut, perfectly shaped, in a flash, in an instant. He looked at me and says, "That's meditation. You need to learn to chop like that." So this is my direct instruction from the Guru To learn to meditate, I had to chop vegetables like that. That became my sole practice. That's all we did in the kitchen, was just chop vegetables. You know, at least that was my job. Cook, I chopped vegetables. 12, 14 hours a day. One day, we were chopping bananas. And at this point, I sort of progressed in my ability as a chopper, and a whole team of people peeling bananas for me. And they would send the banana to me, and I would chop it. And there's one particular moment where suddenly my consciousness was transported to the transcendent, where my body chopping each banana, I could see each kept going through. It was like those old samurai movies where everything's in slow motion. You know, I could see the moment in between the moment. And I was filled with bliss. The room was filled with light, like I'd seen in meditation before. My body was moving at the speed of light. And I was in this place of supreme stillness and ecstasy. And at that moment, there was a knock on the door, and it was my Baba. My Baba Muktananda stuck his head and he said, "Your time in the kitchen's complete. Now you could go teach." And the next day, he made me the master of ceremonies of his programs, where he remained one of his principal teachers for the remainder of his life. The next stage of my sadhana was when my Baba gave me sannyas. This was one of the final initiations. You know, he came into my room one day and he said, "You'll be taking sannyas next year." Sannyas means renunciation, the formal vows of renunciation, where you make the choice to devote your life to the awareness of the self and teaching others about that. I said, "You, Baba?" Yes, I'd like to become a Swami. He said, "What would you like your name to be?" Around my Baba, I could never speak. It was always in such awe of him, my mind wouldn't function in that still space around him. But I was reading the Brahma Sutras. So I looked down and I said, "Oh, my name is Brahmananda." Very good. From now on to be known as Brahmananda. He took sannyas. The final initiation of sannyas was after a 7-day ceremony, fasting, in different mantras, performing our own funeral ritual. 6 in the morning, we went into the sacred river, renounced, gave away all our possessions, all our clothes, went naked into the river, and Swami called, "For the sake of mankind, come back, come back." And then we went to Baba's room for his final blessing, where he gave us the initiation into the Aham Brahmasmi mantra. I remember the moment he put us under a veil, whispered the mantra into our ear. I am Brahman. I am Brahman. So this isn't the mantra that you repeat. Whenever you forget who you are, just mentally recall this moment, this moment. Because in that moment, he transmitted the direct experience of Aham Brahmasmi. This is what I use in moments of forgetting who I am. If I'm going through a stressful time, I just remember my Baba's mouth next to my ear. Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi. We were in Los Angeles in 1981. When out of the blue, one day my Baba said, "I'm going to leave you here in Los Angeles." I've been traveling with him. He went around the world. All over India, Australia, all over the United States, California, Florida, New York, Massachusetts. We arrived in Los Angeles in 1981. he stood me up in front of the satsang. He said, L.A., this is your Swami. I want you to treat him with the same love and respect that you accorded to me. He instructed me to stay behind and to found an ashram. The Siddha Yoga down Los Angeles still exists as the Siddha Yoga Meditation Center. He announced this in Los Angeles about a month before he left, and for the next month, all I could do was weep, because I knew that this was my final time living, with my guru. Now it was time for me to really join his team of teachers and help spread the meditation revolution. That came the final day of his stay in Los Angeles, and he called me for his darshan. He gave me his sandals, his padukas, gave me his peacock feathers, and instructed me to hold intensives and to give Shaktipat. Even gave me his clothing, the clothing that he used to wear at his 2-day programs. He gave me my silk outfit and jacket. So he said, wear this when you give Shaktipat, when you do these intensives. And then he called me close, and there was about maybe 100 people around this final gathering, and they all were leaning in to see what Baba's final words were for me. And he said, clean your own room. Now, my mother had told me that, and it didn't have the same effect. Those words had become like a mantra to me. I should clean my own room. I shouldn't have somebody else do that. I chop my own vegetables. I do my own cooking. I clean my own room. So easy for swamis to become egotistical, have people waiting on them, serving them. Bob said, don't do that. But more than just cleaning my own room every day, that mantra became clean the room of my mind every day. Keep my inner space clean. Live in a state of purity, cleanliness of mind. That's the real realization of God, isn't it? Having positive, uplifting thoughts you can share with others, and avoiding tearing thoughts that create negativity and your own self-talk within your own being. Well, I remained in Los Angeles till the passing of my guru, 1982. I was out surfing, believe it or not. We'd done our morning meditation and our chanting of the Guru Gita. And I was out surfing at Santa Monica Pier. Came back, and something strange happened. Normally during the day, I didn't meditate. I would do seva and run the ashram. This particular day, I was drunk. I was just completely intoxicated and felt the need to meditate. So I surrendered to that fact. I took my shower, cleaned off from the surfing, and sat and meditated. And it was as deep a meditation as I've ever had. And into that space, suddenly Muktananda appeared at the door. And he walked into my room. I would always stand. I would never sit in my guru's presence. He walked into the room and placed his hand on my head. And it was literally like, again, being in an electric socket. You feel all this energy, all of this Shakti pouring into me, filling every cell in my body with Shakti. I was divinely intoxicated. I was in supreme bliss, peace, love. Baba turned, started walking out of the room. Normally I would follow him. I would never just remain seated, but I couldn't get up. I was seated firmly in my meditation there. Baba opened the door, and as he opened the door, I could see the universe. The hallway wasn't out there. It was a star field, stars, planets, the night sky. And Baba stepped out of the door into the night sky. His body began to dissolve, and all of the particles of his body went into the stars and the planets, and he took residence in every particle in the universe. I had no idea at the time what that meant. I sat in meditation for about another hour or so. Then I got a phone call that our Baba Muktananda had taken Mahasamadhi at that moment. And this was his final blessing, was to take residence in the hearts of each of his disciples. This was his final blessing. He lives in the hearts of each of us. Much has happened since his passing. I spent almost 20 years teaching at a church in California, the Unity Church of Tustin. Spent a couple of years at the Movement Center in Portland, Oregon. Most recently as the retreat leader in Assisi retreats in Assisi, Italy. And now I'm in India, continuing to do my sadhana, continuing to teach. We hold monthly intensives where, on behalf of my guru, I give Shaktipat. People come from all over the world to receive this blessing. I'm also involved in a project called Second Education, where we're bringing meditation into the school system of India. I also bring groups to India through the American Veda tours. I work with Phil Goldberg, and we bring groups to India. We have a tour coming up to Italy, to Assisi, Italy. So we continue the work. My Baba once said that his work was given to him by his Guru Bhagavan Nityananda was spread the meditation revolution. And Muktananda certainly did that. He and some of the other great Indian teachers like Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and Vivekananda and so many of the great teachers have brought the teachings to the West. And we continue that great tradition. Now we bring those teachings back from the West to the East and bring them into the school system. People ask me about self-realization, enlightenment, awakening. We asked that question of my Baba. When we took sannyas, we asked Baba, what's it like to be a self-realized being, to be fully enlightened? He said something that stayed with me all these years. He said, there's really no end point. There may be a point where you transcend the need to reincarnate and take a body again, but he said, each year, each day, each breath, the experience of the self gets deeper and deeper and deeper. As we continue to live our lives, we expand our capacity to hold love, expand our capacity to give love. For it's in giving that we receive. We're not in the world to get love, we're in the world to create love, to make love by extending it to others. So my final words to you are the words of my beloved Baba. Every night he would say, meditate on yourself. Honor yourself. Kneel and bow to your own being. God dwells within you, as yourself, as your very own consciousness. My fondest desire and blessing would be that each of you would meditate on your own self and come to recognize that the source of love, source of happiness, the source of joy is right here, We need nothing outside of ourselves to be happy. We're pretty much as happy as we decide to be, as willing as we are to look inside and to know ourselves. The great Greek philosopher Socrates once said, know yourself, know thyself. And that has been my life's work, is to know who I am and to share that experience with everyone. May each of you recognize the divine that dwells within you as you. So I'd like now to open up the floor to any questions you might have.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Swami Brahmananda. I'm incredibly moved with the vibration behind your presentation. So those of you in the audience, if you have some questions, please put them into the chat and I'll be able to see your questions. I'll start with a question that I have for you that I wasn't quite clear when you were presenting about that profound experience you had at the moment of Baba's death, where he walked into the room while you were meditating. Did he manifest in physical form walking into your room, or was this all a visionary experience, or both, or are you not sure?
Yeah, all of the above. All of the above. It was very real for me. So whether he was physically there, or whether he manifested a form, or it was simply a vision, I will never know. But I will tell you that this is the form that he appears to me in life. Whenever I'm facing a major decision in life, Baba will manifest in that same star field. I'll give you an example. 1995, I took some time off from teaching after Baba's passing, and was attending a church at the Unity Church of Tustin, Southern California. And the minister, after the very first service I went to, she came up to me and she said, without even introducing her, she said, "You're here to teach, aren't you?" And I took 2 steps back and said, No, I'm here just to attend, and to be part of it. She said, No, come see me tomorrow. And I came to her office and she said, the Holy Spirit has spoken to me and said that you're here to teach. Think about it, see if you'd be willing to do that. So I prayed to my Baba. I sat for meditation. And in the meditation, he appeared in that same star field. Picture the night sky with the stars and the planets and everything there. It's dark. And out of all those different particles formed a physical body. And it was my Baba. He was riding a white horse. And he said, hop on. As clearly as I'm speaking to you, he said, hop on this horse. And we took off into the starfield. He watched this. And what happened from that point on is that I made the choice to begin teaching again. And the minister of the church, March Britt, had invited me to go to the Unity Ministers Conference on a ship. They had one extra seat available, and they invited me to come. And on the ship, some of the ministers wanted to receive Shaktipat. So we had a little gathering, and to make a long story short, eventually everyone on that trip wanted to receive Shaktipat. And then they invited me to come to over 200 churches in the United States, in the Unity movement and the New Thought movement, to bring this awakening. We actually called it that. It was called the Great Awakening. And I traveled to, as I said, over 200 churches, teaching what I share tonight in a Christian form. See, the truth isn't Hindu or Muslim or Christian. It's universal. When I talk about the Great Awakening, isn't this what happened on Pentecost Sunday in the Christian church? Mm-hmm. Jesus was a Shaktipat guru. He would touch people and they would have healings and spontaneous awakenings in his presence. And on Pentecost Sunday, the the apostles were gathered in a room, and tongues of fire, which is often the way the Kundalini is seen, as tongues of fire, appeared above the heads of the disciples, and they began to speak in tongues and began to heal people. So for me, whether it's a physical or it's a subtle form, it doesn't really matter, because the subtle is within the physical. If we need to see it in a physical form, it can be there, but the subtle reality is as real as the physical reality.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a number of questions, so I'm going to start with them. We have a question here from Krishna, which I think relates to when you were saying that beautiful sentence that Baba told you about clean your own room. Immediately I thought, oh, he's talking about the inner house, the inner cleaning. And the question is, Krishna has is, what is the difference between psychology or psychological clearing and spirituality?
I think all spirituality is psychological cleaning. We can cleanse the mind. I think it was Blake who said, cleanse the doors of perception and see the world as it is. So in psychology, I've done quite a bit of shadow work, and I think the highest forms of psychology is Eastern spirituality. If you think about Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, isn't this the initial form of psychology? So it's basically cleaning the mind, learning how to rid ourselves of thoughts that tear us down. Self-talk. You could think of the essence of yoga as becoming the master of self-talk, the master of the mind. The mind can be our greatest friend. It can be our worst enemy. It can create heaven. It can create hell. It all depends on what we think. So meditation gives us the tools to use the mind as it's meant to be used. The mind is a great tool. The mind can accomplish much. It's a great servant, but an awful master. Too many of us listen to the contents of the mind and believe our own thoughts. Many of the thoughts that we have are negative, aren't they? If you really spend time looking at your day, how much time do we think of thoughts about our own being? Shame, guilt, being frustrated, angry, judging other people, condemning other people, seeing fault. These tear us down. Meditation teaches us to think elevating thoughts. Not to have spiritual bypass. If we have negative feelings, they're usually the result of negative thoughts. That we process the feelings. We feel the feelings. We don't stop them. We digest them fully and completely, and in the process convert what would have been negative energy into uplifting energy. So I'm a great believer in modern psychology. Anything that we can do to elevate the mind and to rid ourselves of negativity, I say amen. So yoga is spiritual psychology.
Thank you, Swamiji. I agree with you completely. Ingrid has a question. She'd like to know, how can we join you in India for one of your intensives, or how can we join you in Italy for one of your retreats? How do we contact you? Can we find you online, or where can we find you?
Let's see. I am on Facebook. On Facebook, I'm Brahmananda David Nowe. And you can always send me a message there on Messenger. For our tours in India, we have a group called American Veda Tours. I do these tours with Phil Goldberg and Karen Mint Howell. And if you look online at American Veda Tours, you should be able to find us. For intensives in India, I have a WhatsApp group called Brahmananda Sangha, where I post all my different events. And if you need a phone number for that group, it's +1 714 925 6646. You send me a message, I'll add you to the Brahmananda Sangha, where we post our intensives and programs there. So those are 3 that you can find out.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. We have another question here from AP, who says your presentation reminds him of Brian Sackett's experience with Swami Muktananda, which actually put him into a mystical experience and spiritual emergency. And AP would like to know, are you the only disciple of Muktananda's who's giving Shaktipat, or are there others? And were you given this mission specifically by Muktananda to transmit Shaktipat? And the final part of the question is, can it be transmitted online, or is it only in person?
All good questions. So there are a few of Muktananda's disciples alive who are still giving Shaktipat. In Australia, my very dear friend, Swami Shankarananda, has an ashram there. He's become a Mahamandaleshwar, which is a great honor. I think he was one of the first Westerners to become that. So Swami Shankarananda is in Australia. Muktananda has 2 official successors. Mahamandaleshwar Swami Nityananda gives Shaktipat, and his ashrams are called Shanti Mandir. He has one in Magod, Gujarat, one ashram in Ganeshpuri, Maharashtra. His main headquarters are in Walden, New York. Guru Mai has an ashram in South Fallsburg, New York. Guru Mai Chidvilasananda. She was one of the 2 successors that Muktananda left. And yes, Muktananda gave me specific instructions to give these intensives in Shaktipat. He showed me how to do it. He commanded me to do it. He gave me his peacock feathers and his padukas, his sandals, even the clothing that he wore when his last intensive in Los Angeles. He gave to me. He said, "Do this in my name." Now, I was very intimidated by that. I couldn't even talk in front of my guru, and the fact that he was telling me to do his work and to give Shaktipat, I was really overwhelmed. And I expressed that to Baba. I said, "Baba, I could never do such a thing. Just remember me. Just remember me. You're not doing it. You have nothing to do with it. You're simply the channel of the lineage. Put your head on my feet." And so I did that. My very first intensives that I gave in Los Angeles, which was only a month after Baba left. We'd actually created the flyer for the intensive, that the next intensive will be so-and-so, will be with Swami Brahmananda. And so I took the sandals that my guru had given me and I put them on a platform. And before I went around and gave Shaktipat with the peacock feathers, I put my head on the sandals. I put my forehead on the sandals. Pranam said, "I'm not the doer. I'm simply the vessel, the vehicle. Flow through me, Baba." And then I looked up, and as I looked up into the sky, I could see Muktananda's face hovering over me. And I leaned back a little bit further, and because Baba's face was facing me, his face were on the feet of his guru, Bhagavan Nityananda. And I leaned back further, and I could see that Bhagavan Nityananda's head was on the feet of Ishwara Iyer. And as far back as I could see, there was an unbroken lineage going all the way back to Shiva. So giving Shaktipat is nothing personal. I simply remember my guru and become empty and allow the power of the lineage to bless and to open those who are ready to receive.
Awesome. Thank you, Swamiji, for that beautiful explanation.
Did I answer all the questions? Did I forget any of them?
I think so. We have a whole bunch more questions, so I'm going to pop on to the next one. And Anne would like to know, Could you please repeat the mantra that you were chanting as the airplane had that near miss accident and landed in the cornfield? And could you please explain the meaning of that mantra to us?
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. This is the initiation mantra of the Siddha lineage. This is the first mantra that I received from Muktananda. Om is the traditional designate, the name of the supreme consciousness, as it were. The actual pronunciation is A-U-Ma, Aum. A-U-Ma. So A is the physical body. U is the subtle body. M is the causal body. And the silence that follows the Om is the super consciousness. So as we repeat it, Om, it lifts us into that consciousness. Nama is the same root as the word namaste. When I say namaste, I bow to you, I honor you. Nama means I bow to that universal consciousness, Shiva. Shiva is the name for universal consciousness in our tradition, and it's that universal consciousness that dwells within each of us as our own being. Think of it as a spark in the divine fire, as the drop in the ocean. That Shaivism says that everything is consciousness, and that we are the supreme consciousness experiencing itself as an individual, as somehow surveying itself through the eyes of a physical body, but that everything in fact is consciousness. So when we repeat the mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, and you can use this in meditation. If you'd like to receive a mantra, consider this an initiation, this transmission. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. You would simply repeat this mantra at your regular rate of speaking. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Or you can repeat it with your breath. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And the meaning should be understood. What you can do is understand that the mantra is the sound vibration of consciousness itself. So you can think of it as a homing device. So if you repeat Om Namah Shivaya, it will draw you within. So you should repeat it with the awareness that the mantra, the repeater of the mantra, and the deity of the mantra, which is supreme consciousness, are all one. Don't keep it separate from yourself. This is the sound of your own self. You're calling your own name, as it were. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. And so you can use this in meditation. Your mind wanders and you start thinking something else. That's okay. Gently bring it back to the repetition. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. And this is the vehicle that Muktananda used to initiate people. So I have to give you a little caution here. You may experience Kundalini Awakening. This is an initiation mantra, and if you're ready for that, use this mantra, Om Namah Shivaya.
Yeah.
Om Namah Shivaya. It's the great Siddha mantra. It was used by my guru and his guru before him, and it goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's what's called a Chaitanya mantra. It means it's alive. It's not just a set of words. It carries with it the consciousness of the ones who repeated it and realized the self through that repetition. Om Namah Shivaya.
Thank you, Swamiji. We only have time for one final question, and Dan has pointed out that question about Shaktipat transmission, there was one portion that wasn't answered yet. And so his question is not so much about transmitting Shaktipat via Zoom, but can Shaktipata be transmitted at a distance, or must it always be in person?
Good question. When the student is ready, Shaktipat happens. Some people, it's through a direct contact with a guru, physically. Some people, it can be through a photo, like people would receive Shaktipat from Muktananda's photo. If one is ready to receive Shaktipat, the Supreme Consciousness will find a way to make that happen. I know that there are people who do Shaktipat intensives online. I would consider doing that, because it's the consciousness of the self is already within us. It's not the property of any lineage or tradition. God dwells within you as you already, as you are, and it already has been. So it's just a question of awakening to that awareness. I suspect that there will be people who receive Shaktipat from this very conference. If we are ready for it, the Shakti will awaken. Mm-hmm. And I will consider giving a Shaktipat intensive online. Maybe my next one I will do that. So I will let you all know. And if you want to be part of the Brahmananda Sangha, I can give you details of when that would be. Good question. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Swami Brahmananda. Our time is up. This was an incredibly inspiring, deep, wisdom-filled and Shakti-filled presentation. So thank you so very, very, very much for all the pearls of wisdom and the divine love that you emanated to all of us.
Thank you so much for the invitation. What a joy, what a delight. You're doing such great work. Thank you so much for your service. Love to you all.
Thank you for your service, Swamiji.